I'm not a vet,
but I still need to be able to monitor the health of my birds and make sure they're all in good condition.
and if you are thinking about getting a bird of prey or have your own bird, then you should be able to do this too. In this video, I'm going to go step by step how to do a health check of your hawk. We're also going to go over some of the diseases and conditions that we should be looking out for if you own a bird of prey. And at the end of the video, I'm going to go over my tips on how you should be finding and registering your hawk with an avian vet.
Performing visual health checks on your hawk is something that you should be doing every single day. The first thing that you should do on a morning when you wake up is go and visually health check your bird. It should become instinct and just something that you do every time you pick up and interact with your hawk. Performing health checks on a bird is something that's new to you, then it can be quite difficult to remember every single thing that you need to check. How I remember how to do it is quite simply, you start from the top of the bird and make your way to the bottom. So I always start with the beak and make my way to their tail.
As the beak continually grows like fingernails, we need to check the length and the sides. The bird should be able to comfortably open and close the beak with no parts catching, and the sides should not be showing any signs of curling inwards. We also need to check for any cracks or flakes. The nostrils should be clean and clear with no blockages or discharges. Moving up to the cere, and that's the skin between the hard part of the beak and the feathers, and this should be nice and clean with no lesions. Birds can sometimes bang the cere and damage it, causing bleeding, and as it is so close to food when they eat, it needs to be kept clean. The eyes are often a good indicator of health. The eyes should be alert and round. If the eyes are partly held shut, then this can be a sign of lethargy and there might be something wrong. Looking at the whole body of the hawk, the feathers should be clean and in good condition. The bird should be keeping herself clean with baths and preening. We need to check the wingtips, the bird's wrists, the base of the outermost primary wing feathers. These should have no signs of any lesions or swelling. Blood supply in the bird's wingtip is relatively poor, and traumas can result in wingtip edemas. This can be very difficult to fix. We should be regularly checking her legs and feet to make sure the equipment isn't rubbing or too tight. It's very important that feet are clean. The hawk uses her feet to hold her food, and she's always perching on them, so it's critical that you are checking the top and the bottom of the feet. Sores and lesions on the foot can lead to pododermatitis. I use natural perching in my aviaries as they provide a varied surface that can be disinfected easily. It's also good to check her perching area or aviary and learn what her normal stools and casts look like, as changes to these can also help indicate if there's something wrong. Not every issue will be visible from the outside. Generally, the hawk should be bright and alert, and over time you will learn what your hawk's normal behaviour is, making it easier to tell when there's something wrong.
Now the difficult thing about health checking a bird is that they won't tell you if there's something wrong. In the wild, if they were to show that they were unhealthy, it would leave them more open to predation, so it's really unbeneficial to show when there's something wrong. Predator in the wild knows it has a better chance of catching its prey if it's ill or injured, so birds have learned not to show any problems. But there are certain pathogens, parasites and injuries that we need to be looking out for.
one of the biggest killers of captive birds is a fungal infection called Aspergillosis. It's believed that Aspergillosis is the cause of 15 to 30% of captive bird of prey deaths. The infection causes air saculitis, which is the swelling of the air sacs, and this greatly compromises the efficiency of the respiratory tract. Symptoms of an Aspergillus infection include loss of appetite and lethargy, but the main symptom will be in the breathing. You'll notice that your bird is panting even when just sitting on the perch, and you might even be able to hear a raspiness in their breath. Aspergillus can also infect the digestive tract of your bird, so the breathing might not be as obvious, and that's why it's really important to be properly managing the weight of your hog to make sure that you know if anything ever changes. As this is a fungal spore, it is just naturally in the air, and so the birds do have a bit of resistance to it. But there are things we can do to reduce the risk, particularly with the way that you build your aviaries and what surrounds your aviaries. When I first started in falconry, it was repeated to me over and over again that Aspergillus spores grow on rotting wood. Now, although that is true, it's unfortunately not that simple, and Aspergillus isn't that specific. Fungal spores like dark and damp environments, so it's really important how you build your hawk's housing. If using wood, you need to make sure that it's treated for outdoor use, and if it isn't, you need to make sure that you treat and paint the wood yourself to stop it from holding moisture and rotting. You also need to make sure that your hawk's housing is really well ventilated. I have zoo mesh across the entire front of my aviaries and an open section at the top as well.
Now, I would love to be out making this video with one of my hawks, But unfortunately, due to another pathogen we have to look out for, bird flu or avian influenza, I can't do that at the moment. Avian influenza tends to affect poultry and waterfowl, but it can also infect raptors. And we get it periodically here in the UK, and it's typically brought over by migratory birds. Now, bird flu is a notifiable disease, which means if there is a case here in the UK, it becomes public knowledge and you will be told about it. Now, bird flu won't always stop falconry. There are different strains, and the outbreak that we've got at the moment is a highly pathogenic, which means as of the 14th of December, the government put a lockdown on all of the captive birds. My suggestion for keeping up with bird flu would be to sign up for disease alerts with the APHA. You can sign up through their website and they'll send you a text with the location whenever there is a case of bird flu.
With raptors having a diet of raw meat, there are certain pathogens that can infect their digestive tracts, so it's really important to have good hygiene in both their aviaries and the food storage areas. The most common bacterial infection found in birds of prey is E. coli. And so with similar symptoms to the other infections we've discussed, E. coli can also cause bloody mutes. So you need to learn what your hawk's poo normally looks like, so that way you can tell if there's any changes. Another digestive tract infection that occurs much higher up in the system is sour crop. This is a yeast infection and is generally caused as a result of some other type of infection. Sour crop causes the lining of the crop to thicken, giving the appearance of a really full crop. This will result in a loss of weight and condition, and if left untreated can kill the bird. So you need to make sure that you're storing your hawk's food properly and keeping their housing clean. Some people use gravel in the bottom of their aviaries, but I use sand because I think it's really easy just to go through and sieve it so it's really clean all the time.
As well as pathogenic infections, birds can also suffer from parasitic infections. Parasitic infections are typically picked up from the environment or whenever your hawk will interact with wildlife. There are two types of parasite: endoparasites, which live inside the body, and ectoparasites, which live outside the body. One example of an endoparasite, an internal parasite, is coccidiosis. It can be quite hard to tell if your bird has coccidiosis, but generally they will be quite lethargic and they seem to just keep losing weight no matter how much food you give them. It's quite easy to treat with just a tablet, but you should speak to your vet and send them a mute sample before doing this. An example of an ectoparasite is feather mites. Feather mites can be quite difficult to see, so this is why it's really important that you keep doing health checks regularly on your bird. They just look like a little grain of sand underneath the feather. Birds will tend to get these around the springtime when the wild populations are quite active and making their nests. And these are really easy to treat, and you can get spray-on treatments over the counter at the shop. Now, although it's really useful to be able to recognise when our birds are ill, unless you are qualified to do so, you should not try to treat your birds yourself. Leave it to your vet. But how do you find a vet that's comfortable treating a bird of prey? Here are my tips for finding a practice you should register your birds of prey at.
Chances are, a bird of prey will not be the first animal you own. If you have other animals that are registered at a practice, ask a usual vet if they have another vet at the practice who deals with exotics, or if they know another practice nearby that does. If your breeder is near to where you live, ask them what vet they use. Search engines are a great tool. Don't be afraid to just search exotic vets, as some of them might not specify that they treat birds of prey. If you know of any local falconers, if there is a bird of prey centre or a wildlife rehab centre, reach out to them and ask them what practice they use. There are loads of social media groups such as the Falconry Hub on Facebook, and chances are someone in one of these groups will be able to help you out.
You don't need to be an expert in health and disease to become a falconer, but it is important that you have a basic knowledge so that you can tell if there's something wrong with your hawk. And remember, if you suspect there's anything wrong or you don't know about something, always contact your vet. Make sure to subscribe for more falconry related content, and thank you for watching.